What's up, everybody? And today we're checking out what happens when a Chinese spy ship gets too close to a US aircraft carrier. This is by Navy Productions. I will leave a link down below to the original video. Please go over there, give it a like, subscribe, all that good stuff. Really, really important that you do that. This is like 15 minutes long, so sit back, chill out, relax, get yourself a cup of tea, get yourself a cold beer, maybe pour it in your chug. The channel sponsor, best drinking vessel in the world. Get yourself a chug, 10% off, link down below. Literally, these things are phenomenal. Handmade, by the way, by hand. Handmade by hand in the UK by a small business. Free customization, free carrying bag. They're amazing. Also, check out Morale, link down below. This is going to be blowing up soon. I cannot believe that we were actually successful with the Kickstarter. It's incredible that this movement is getting bigger and bigger and not slowing down. You're going to want to be a part of it. Link down below. Other than that, let's shut up. Let's pull this up. Let's see what's going on here. I like these videos because for the most part, they're hypothetical. Like what would actually happen? This is my presumption. It would get absolutely obliterated out of the water because US aircraft carriers don't really move about on their own. Let me turn subbies on. Let's see what it's going to say.
Ever wondered what goes down when a Chinese spy ship gets too close to a U.S. aircraft carrier? When an unknown ship pops up on the radar of an American aircraft carrier, the crew swiftly jumps into action. But what exactly is a spy ship?
What exactly is a spy ship?
With all sorts of gear to eavesdrop on communications, track movements, and gather information about other ships. The aircraft carrier's first move? Trying to figure out who's approaching by using binoculars and trying to make contact.
The truth is, though, like, if it was a spy ship, a genuine spy ship, it wouldn't have to get close. It wouldn't have to get that close.
Meanwhile, the captain gets the heads up, and it's all hands on deck for assessing the situation.
Why does this guy sound drunk?
The spy ship gets dangerously close. The crew springs into action with a bunch of tricks to keep the carrier and its crew safe. They set up barriers and start using electronic warfare tactics to mess with the spy ship's surveillance and communication gear while keeping their own gear in check. Electronic warfare is like a secret weapon here, with specialists jamming signals and playing with frequencies to throw off the spy ship. They work closely with the rest of the crew, all chatting on secure channels to keep things under wraps and stay coordinated with other ships nearby.
Isn't it true that a US aircraft carrier usually has a submarine that's following it as well? We just don't know, obviously, where it is because it's under the water, obviously. But I've heard that, maybe I've seen it in a few comments where the majority of aircraft carriers, they have other ships with them. But there's also a possibility that they have a submarine around the area as well. It wouldn't surprise me. It would make complete sense, wouldn't it, really?
When things get tense out at sea, following the rules is key. The crew sticks to their rules of engagement, only responding to threats in a way that's fair and in self-defense. They're careful not to
Them lines get way blurrier, though, when it comes to intelligence. Gets way blurrier.
Make things worse, aiming to keep tensions low while still protecting the carrier's crew. But before we get to that, there's also the legal side of things. The response protocol must stick to unclose, so they don't mess with the dynamics of the high seas.
What?
So what exactly is this rule book? The United Nations Convention on the Law of the Sea, or UNCLOS for short, is like the rule book for the big blue expanse that covers most of our planet. Think of it as the referee, overseeing everything from fishing to how ships get around. It's a big deal, with over 160 countries, including heavyweights like the US and China, signing on.
Interesting.
Now, let's talk about the freedom of the high seas. It's the wild west of the ocean. Ships from any country can sail wherever they want without asking permission.
I've seen some insane stuff as well. Like one of these tankers, we were on ship doing anti-piracy and we got a call that one of them was sinking. It was insane because it was really rough to see at the time as well. And our ship that we were in was a flat bottom ship, so we were feeling everything. And we went out to keep an eye on it, and it was like on its side. It was unbelievable. And you see the size of these things as well. It was unbelievable. You see weird stuff out at sea all the time.
Even military ships can flex their muscles out there, doing their own thing. Airplanes can buzz overhead, and countries can scoop up fish or lay down cables just as long as they play by the rules and don't trash the ocean. But wait, there's a little bit more. Enter the Exclusive Economic Zone, or EEZ for short.
Okay.
Picture it as the country's own little slice of ocean, extending 200 nautical miles from its shores. Within this zone, coastal nations call the shots. They decide.
Yeah, this is Bobby Basic stuff, but when you're out in the middle of nowhere in the ocean, it can get pretty weird. It can get weird real quick.
Who gets to fish, dig up resources like oil, or set up shop. Oh, and forget about bringing your military toys for a show. That's a no-go in the EEZ.
Nice
Now,
mustache.
let's talk about an innocent passage. It's something like cruising through someone else's neighborhood. You can do it, but you gotta keep it chill and drama-free. Ships, even warships, can sail through another country's territorial sea. That's the 12-mile zone just off their coast.
Interesting.
As long as they don't cause trouble. No military drills or snooping around allowed during an innocent passage.
The thing is, though, like, we know that countries don't necessarily abide by that because we were told stories when I was in the Marines that Russian submarines that are undetectable underwater would just pop up within our zones, so that it would ping on our radar that there's Russians there, and then they would pop back down again. Just to kind of be like, hey, just so you know, we can do what we want type of thing. So this is kind of like a bit of a... It's a way for countries to monitor their area, but also at the same time, it's a way for other countries to threaten and stuff.
Yet keeping tabs on all this action isn't easy. The ocean's a big place, and playing ocean cop is no picnic. Plus, unclose only works if countries play nice. And let's face it, tensions can run high out there. Take the South China Sea, for instance. It's like a powder keg of legal drama.
Yeah,
China's
look at
got
that.
its eyes on a big chunk of it, throwing unclosest rules out the window in some cases. That's got its neighbors like the Philippines and Vietnam all riled up. And don't even get me started on those Chinese spy ships tailing US and friendly vessels. Sure, they might not be breaking any laws, but it sure ain't making things any easier.
No, but it's also an intimidation tactic. They're trying to be like, we're constantly going to do whatever we can to frustrate you, annoy you, bug you, let you know that we're here. You know, it happens all the time. I went to school in Maine for computer science, and we did a cybersecurity class, and we found out that every single day, Western companies are trying to be hacked, like literally every minute, by Chinese and Russian individuals. Like, they're getting bombarded constantly to try and be hacked. To be the same with
being on the
military
bridge
stuff.
of a U.S. aircraft carrier, a sovereign nation sailing through the international waters. Suddenly, you see a Chinese spy ship. How does the U.S. Navy respond in such a situation?
Shoot it down!
The
No, I'm
answer
joking.
lies in balancing three crucial things: maintaining professionalism, upholding freedom of navigation, and avoiding escalation. Their first line of defense is clear and concise communication. U.S. Navy vessels are equipped with advanced communication systems, allowing them to establish contact with the nearby Chinese spy ship. This initial contact serves multiple purposes. It establishes the U.S. presence, clarifies their intentions, and opens a channel for dialogue.
I wonder how that dialogue works, though, between different dialects and different languages. Like, are the Chinese necessarily going to want to speak English? And is there some sort of AI translator that happens straight away? Like, how does that work? Do they all just try and generically speak in English? But it wouldn't surprise me if Russian or Chinese individuals were like, fuck trying to communicate in English. You can learn my language type of thing.
The message from the U.S. Navy is typically straightforward. This is a U.S. Navy vessel conducting routine operations in international waters. We request that you maintain a safe distance. This clear communication helps to avoid any misunderstandings and potential miscalculations that could lead to a more serious incident. The U.S. Navy prioritizes safety at all
that
times,
fleet,
of course,
sheesh.
and international regulations establish guidelines for safe separation distances between vessels at sea. U.S. Navy ships will maintain a safe and professional distance from the Chinese spy ship, ensuring there is no risk of collision or accidental entanglement. This allows both vessels to continue their lawful activities without unnecessary hindrance. While maintaining a safe distance, the U.S. Navy will undoubtedly be actively gathering information about the Chinese spy ship. Advanced radar systems and electronic intelligence gathering equipment will be used to monitor the vessel's movements and activities. This information is crucial for understanding the intentions of the Chinese vessel and for maintaining situational awareness. It's important to note that the U.S. Navy will conduct this intelligence gathering within the bounds of international law and avoid any actions that could be construed as harassment or provocation. The presence of a Chinese spy ship, while unwelcome...
The thing is, though, we know that, like, didn't we see footage a while back of the ship just cutting right in front of a US ship? I think it was a Chinese ship, but I might be wrong. And they were like, you're in my path, get out the way. And the US was like, no, you're in my path, get out the way. And none of them moved because they were just like, you're in my path. No, you're in my path. And they just nearly hit each other. You can go back and you can watch that video.
Shouldn't deter the U.S. Navy from its primary mission. Succumbing to the pressure or altering course due to the presence of a spy ship would be seen as a concession. Whether it's conducting freedom of navigation operations, participating in joint exercises with allies, or simply patrolling international waters, the U.S. Navy will continue its mission objectives in a professional and unwavering manner. The U.S. Navy understands the potential for heightened tensions in such encounters. To promote de-escalation, they may even choose to publicly acknowledge the presence of a Chinese spy ship through official press releases or social media statements.
Yeah, again, that's not going to intimidate them in any way, though. They'll still do it. Like, if anything, that's a success for them. They'll be looking at that and being like, hey, we made it onto the news. Look, we're still harassing them in a way. And it's not, like I said, it's not like harassment just for the sake of annoying. It's them being like, look, we're still here. And we're still more than capable of keeping an eye on you. That's all it is. It happens all the time, like I said, with the Russian submarine thing. I just think it's when does it turn to harassment? When does it get too much? When is it that the US can turn around and be like, listen, you really need to back off right now? Like, when does it get to that point? I think there's a blurred line there, right? Because in the day and age like today where technology is incredibly important, it's sometimes hacking something can be even more damaging than actually firing a missile at something, like, and having physical damage. And so at what point are we going to be changing the laws when it comes to digital warfare on these ships? That's a subject that's way out of my expertise and my pay grade, but it'd be fascinating to know.
This transparency allows better public perception and discourages misinformation that could escalate tensions. The U.S. Navy doesn't operate in isolation. When encountering a Chinese spy ship while sailing with allied vessels, communication and collaboration become even more important. Still, maintaining professionalism in the face of potential intimidation requires constant vigilance and a high degree of discipline. The presence of a Chinese spy ship may be seen as a deliberate attempt to disrupt Navy operations or gather sensitive intelligence. But the U.S. Navy personnel are trained to remain calm, collected, and focused on their mission objectives. Responding with anger, frustration, or erratic maneuvers would only serve to escalate the situation. Professionalism, on the other hand, sends a clear message that the U.S. Navy is not easily intimidated and will not be deterred from carrying out its lawful activities.
No, but at the same time, there's a balance of not just being like... How can you explain it? So, like, the situation of that video where there's two ships going towards each other, if they were actually going to collide, like, someone's going to let go of their ego for a bit and be like, all right, back off them. They're obviously pissing about here. Do you know what I mean? Without necessarily making it an escalation, being able to turn around and be like, all right, they're obviously following us to try and get intel from us or get some sort of information. They're allowed to do whatever they need to do, but they can't start messing about with our communication system. And if they do that, then we've got to sort something out. But at the same time, if a ship is like following you, right? Maybe it's better for the British or US ship to kind of like move to the side and just see if it keeps going. And if it stops and it's obviously just there for the sake of being there because you're there, then you can, you don't want to escalate it, but you definitely want to start like showing a bit more, I don't know, showing a bit more of a stance. Does that make sense?
But before we continue, be sure to tell us how you face panic situations in the comments down below. The encounter between
Get the rounds down, don't you? Just get the rounds down. That's what I do. Just get the rounds down.
the U.S. aircraft carrier and the Chinese spy ship isn't happening in a vacuum. It unfolds against the backdrop of a complex web of factors that contribute to a tense equilibrium in the region. The South China Sea has become a major point of contention between the U.S. and China. China claims vast swaths of the South China Sea. This disagreement creates a volatile environment where even seemingly routine encounters can take on a heightened significance. The thing is, both the US and China have been steadily increasing their military capabilities in recent years.
Yeah, I mean, that's just normal growth. They're going to do that. I do also believe that they're constantly trying to outdo each other, but the truth is China's just not going to catch up to the US. That's the truth of it. Whether you think a US soldier is better than a Chinese soldier is irrelevant. It really is irrelevant at this point because the tech that America has is just so far advanced compared to anyone else that it's like I said, it's like a Roman legion rocking up onto the British Isles when it was still, the Celts there. And yes, you would cause a bit of a stir with people like Boudica. I'm going into a big analogy here. But the truth is, it's the Roman legion, right? Like, the truth is, this is America. Yes, you could cause a bit of a stir if they wanted to, but it won't even put a dent into the US military industrial complex, let's be honest.
The U.S. maintains a strong presence in the region with its powerful 7th Fleet, including aircraft carriers, guided missile destroyers, and submarines. China, on the other hand, has been rapidly modernizing its People Liberation Army Navy, or PLAN, building sophisticated warships
Making a plan.
and expanding its reach. This growing military muscle on both sides creates a climate of suspicion and mistrust, making close encounters between the vessels all the more nerve-wracking. The U.S. and China walk a tightrope in these situations. Both nations have a strong interest in maintaining freedom of navigation and upholding international law. However, they also need to avoid actions that could be perceived as provocative or lead to an unintended escalation. This requires a perfect balance, asserting their rights while simultaneously working to de-escalate tensions. The encounter between the U.S. aircraft carrier and the Chinese spy ship isn't an outlier. It's a symptom of a larger issue. This is why
Yeah, and I want people to know as well that this happens a lot. Like, this happens a lot. Like, military vessels just being shadowed by other countries and people kind of being like, what are they doing over there? And they'll go and take a look. And it happens all the time.
Diplomacy goes beyond just talking. Collaborative efforts on non-confrontational issues like disaster relief, scientific research, and environmental protection can build trust and mutual understanding. These shared endeavors demonstrate the benefits of cooperation and create a more positive atmosphere for resolving disputes in the South China Sea. Geopolitical implications, a ripple effect. The seemingly routine encounter between a U.S. aircraft carrier and a Chinese spy ship in the South China Sea carries far-reaching geopolitical implications. Frequent encounters between U.S. and Chinese vessels in disputed waters heighten tensions and increase the risk of miscalculation. A minor navigational error, a misinterpreted maneuver, or a technical malfunction could spark a confrontation with unpredictable consequences.
I don't know about that, though, because the truth is when two ships get close to each other that are kind of like opposing nations like China and the US, they both become so alert with what's going on and they're monitoring every single thing. If it was a mistake, I think one of them would say, I think the US would get on comms to China and be like, I don't know, like, I'm saying a shit example here, but saying like they can't steer, for instance, so they can't go off course. They would be like, we literally cannot go off course because of our rudders broke or whatever. I think China would be okay with that and they would move. Like, I don't necessarily think that like a breakdown or something not working would be a factor into these two escalating. It's when they're both completely switched on and know what they're doing and cause each other trouble. Does that make sense?
The presence of sophisticated weaponry on both sides further elevates the stakes, turning a minor incident into a full-blown conflict.
It doesn't happen.
These heightened tensions also have a chilling effect on regional stability. Countries bordering the South China Sea, caught between the two superpowers, face pressure to choose sides, potentially fracturing long-standing alliances and partnerships.
No, I don't agree with that.
Potential for a wider conflict, drawing in other regional players, becomes a real concern.
I don't agree with that. If a third party was there, like if a British vessel was there or even someone completely not aligned with both countries, I don't think it would make a difference. They would just be like, yeah, I'm just coming through, guys. Don't mind me. I think that it happens a lot where people wind each other up, but the truth is it doesn't really escalate further than that. Or at least I've not heard or seen anything like that. It's more of a case of just being like, hey, we're here, and that's it. And they're like, oh, they're back again. That's all it is. It's very rare that it actually gets further than that. Very, very rare. In fact, I don't think it's happened in years. It's got worse than that.
But it doesn't end there. You see, the South China Sea is a vital economic artery. Roughly 1/3 of the world's crude oil passes through this region, and it is a critical hub for international trade. Escalating tensions and the potential for conflict can easily disrupt vital shipping lanes, impacting global supply chains and driving up the cost of goods. Uncertainty over access to the resources in the South China Sea also discourages investment and development. Countries with potential claims to oil, gas, and fisheries hesitate to invest in exploration and extraction for fear of retaliation or conflict.
I feel like we're getting off topic here, guys. Come on, Navy production. We're getting off topic here.
Causing economic stagnation, which hampers growth and the development within the region. The future of freedom of navigation. The U.S. has long championed the principle of freedom of navigation, ensuring the free flow of commerce and military vessels through international waters.
Well, that's what they're trying to do with the Houthis right now. Because at the end of the day, there should be the right to be able to move freely in that area, and the Houthis are pissing about. And a lot of that stuff is US cargo, US shipments, US whatever, or even Western stuff. And if the Houthis keep pissing about, then they're just going to get bombed still, aren't they?
However, China's growing assertiveness in the South China Sea challenges this principle. If left unchecked, this could set a dangerous precedent, emboldening China to further restrict access to international waters and potentially impacting freedom of navigation in other strategic waterways around the world.
No, that doesn't count, because if China was like, all right, we're going to extend our region to X space, which they've done before, the US and the West would just be like, no. What are you going to do? Shoot us down? They're not. You could get right on the line of their border of international waters with China, and if they're like, it's ours, and we're like, no, it's not, they're not going to shoot us down, because then it would literally cause a war. If China tried to shoot at a US ship, it would literally cause a war. And so China are not going to do it. They're just going to bark and bark and bark with no bite.
Moreover, China's rapid military modernization and its assertive territorial claims are seen by the U.S. as a challenge to its long-held dominance in the region. These encounters become a testing ground for both nations and a way to gauge each other's resolve and capabilities. The outcome of these encounters can have a significant impact on the regional balance of power. A perceived U.S. retreat in the face of Chinese pressure could embolden China to encourage further assertiveness. Conversely, a strong U.S. pushback could lead to a more confrontational relationship between the two superpowers. Navigating the complex geopolitical landscape of the South China Sea requires a renewed commitment to diplomacy and international law. Open communication channels between the U.S. and China are crucial for de-escalating tensions and preventing misunderstandings. But finding common ground through peaceful dialogue and adhering to the principles established by UNCLOS remains essential for maintaining regional stability.
The thing is, like, people like China and other countries have tried to change it, and everyone else has just been like, no, we're not going to do that. And that happens all the time as well. Like, I'm sure people in the comments would give examples of that. But the truth is, international waters are international waters. You can do what you want in them. And yes, Chinese spy ships or whatever can follow American vessels. But the truth is, there's probably Russian submarines following them everywhere anyway. That's the truth.
Thus, fostering a rules-based international order in the South China Sea becomes crucial. This means encouraging all parties to respect international law, settle disputes peacefully, and refrain from unilateral actions that heighten tensions. Regional organizations like ASEAN, the Association of Southeast Asian Nations, can play a vital role in promoting dialogue and cooperation. But at the end of the day, the future of the South China Sea and the wider Indo-Pacific region hinges on the ability of the US, China, and other stakeholders to navigate these delicate geopolitical waters in peace. Do you think this recent encounter between the US Navy and the Chinese spy ship will have some far-fetched consequences?
The truth is, I think the biggest question is not so much that a Chinese ship is trailing a US ship, whether this is real or not. I think the question is, at what point do we start taking cybersecurity on these ships as a point of you're attacking them, right? If the China, because obviously if this survey ship's following a Chinese, if this Chinese ship is following a US ship, they're probably like, all right, what information can we get from them and how can we hack it without necessarily being too intrusive? At what point do we turn around and say, all right, if you start messing with our comms, then the rules of engagement change? That's the conversation we want to be having, and that's more of a philosophical one, but at the same time, I think it's important because the technology is changing and advancing. Let me know what you think. I will leave a link down below to the original video. Let me know what you think in the comments, because I think that is a very interesting subject, and I would love to know what you personally think. Check out Chug, 10% off link down below, and check out Morale, my new business, down below as well. I'll be live every Tuesday and Thursday at 8 p.m. British Standard Time. And until next time, I love you all. Have a wonderful day. Goodbye.